This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, show 142.
Welcome to We the SEs Podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba.
What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another video. Thank you guys for being here. This is the new year. I am recording this on December 29th at almost 8 p.m. And it's not the new year yet, but it feels so close. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you to everybody who's been around, who's helped me personally, who's helped we the SEs, who's helped other SEs. I feel lucky and blessed to have been or to be part of this community, the best community in the world. And I can honestly say that without hesitation. I've never seen a community that tries to help other people within that community or other people trying to enter that community like the sales engineering community. And it makes sense, like we are kind of purpose-built. Sales engineers are purpose-built to help others and solve problems. So I shouldn't be surprised that this is the case. But I just want to say 2020 was not easy. Not on a personal level, it wasn't easy. And I know a lot of people have had their hard times as well with 2020, and hopefully 2021 will be better. But I am just proud of the SE community for coming together. All right. Well, enough lovey-dovey stuff. We do have a guest today. Our guest today is an author and a sales engineer. He did not write a book about sales engineering. I think he does have a book about sales engineering, but the book we talked about today is not about sales engineering. So our guest, his name's Oscar Santolalla. Hopefully he doesn't hear this intro, but our guest's name is Oscar Santolalla. He's written a book about demos, but he's also written a book about rocking the tech stage, and that's the title of the book, Rock the Tech Stage. And as sales engineers, that's something we do quite a bit. We don't necessarily always stand on stage, but every time we meet a customer, it is a stage somewhat. So I really enjoyed talking to him about it. And he does have his website. He has his own podcast about public speaking. He's interested in that topic. So actually, I'll leave that thought to the outro. How about we just listen to the discussion with Oscar? Let's jump into the show. Good afternoon, Oscar. How are you?
Very good, Ramsey. Nice seeing you.
Likewise. So you are not in North America. You're somewhere else, just as cold as Canada, though. So who are you? Yes, what are you doing for a living? Where are you and all that?
Yeah, I am in Finland, in Helsinki, Finland, first of all. Yes, I think as cold as Canada might be. In this time of the year, we have a little bit of sun, but not too much as we wished.
Yeah.
So my name is Oscar Santolalla. I am Peruvian, actually, living here in Finland 14 years. And my day job is sales engineer, as many of the ones are listening to this show. I'm a sales engineer in a company called UbiSecure. It's about digital identity. And I have some side projects, including one podcast and also a couple of books. The second one that I just released.
You just released. I looked at it. It's not released in Canada until 2021, so I'm looking forward to that. But what is the name of your podcast? Might as well talk about it right now.
The name of the podcast, my first podcast, actually, my personal podcast is called Time to Shine. It's all about public speaking and communication skills. I have already 6 years doing this, interviewing people from all over the world. So that's the podcast. And actually, now that you mentioned podcast, I have another podcast that is part of the job, part of UbiSecure. Okay. The other podcast is called Let's Talk About Digital Identity, in which is a bit more than 1 year. I'm also the host, the one who interviews specialists, people into this.
All right. So many questions. First off, what made you start your own podcast, your personal podcast?
First reason is that I used to, until now, I used to listen to a lot of podcasts. So I really like podcasts. I've been listening to podcasts for from now 10 years at least, I've been listening. 10 years ago, there were not as many, but I always found some interesting stuff. And around 6 years ago, I had the idea, okay, I'm listening to this. Can I try to do my own? So I bought a simple book for some guys. I said, okay, well, I need to learn some stuff, but yeah, I can do it. So I learned, I bought some equipment, and I launched my podcast. And at that time, I was already getting very interested in public speaking. That's why I chose interview people around this topic of public speaking. So I started with that, and well, things started getting more interesting, and I continue until now. So one of the things, as you know, is consistency is super important in this podcast sphere, because many people start, but not many people last really long.
That's true.
And maybe to that point as well, particularly that idea of maybe consistency, I'd imagine that maybe the feel and maybe the topics that you cover on each of your respective podcasts are consistent. Would you say the feel and maybe the topics covered between both the professional one and your personal one, are they very similar, very different topics, very different feel as well? Or how would you describe the differences between your two different shows?
Oh yeah, they were very different. Of course, in the personal podcast, Time to Shine, I ask about public speaking, storytelling, presentation skills, things related to that. In the other podcast, so let's talk about digital identity. When I just joined the company, I talked with the marketing guys, and I say, yeah, I have a podcast. And they look at me like, oh, we want to have a podcast at the company. And say, yeah, we can do that. But of course, you need, for that type of topics, more technical, you need to know more a bit about the topics. So I didn't push that until more or less a bit more than 1 year. I was working there, so I have a good enough understanding, so I can conduct an interview, because you need to know quite a bit of the topic in order to do good questions. Even though what I always do is we set the topic in advance, a specific topic, and I send the questions in advance, so the guest can be well prepared as they wish. But still, I can follow the script, and there will be interesting things there, and I would like to ask something extra, and that gives more richness to the conversation, more spontaneity as well. So that's why you need to know the topic that you are talking about.
A bunch of follow-ups. So you are interviewing other people in the professional, I don't know what you want to call it, in your job podcast
as well. Yes.
Are you interviewing like customers? Who are you interviewing? People from within your company? Who are you interviewing?
Not actually from the company. We have interviewed only the CEO ones. So one of the rules is avoid interviewing people from the company. So interview mostly some customers or partners. We have other companies who are partners, but many people who are just into that sphere of digital identity, experts in different topics, interesting topics. We don't have any commercial connection, just find interesting people and interview them. Some people are in industries that are connected, and others are doing some more non-profit or so. So there are people from different, and the topics in this case are, for instance, authentication, privacy, data protection, can be data security, many topics related to digital identity.
So it's more technology focused than product focused. You're not necessarily trying to sell your product on the podcast, but you are trying to provide information about the technology as a whole. Is that right?
Yeah, we don't directly try to sell our product, no, because often the topics are, we don't have any business, because we can talk with people that are in New Zealand, in Kenya. We don't have any business in these countries, but they tell about initiatives about digital identity that are interesting for us. And yeah, it's the The main topics are technical, yes, because data identity is technical, but we give the touch of business. So the slogan is connecting identity and business. So technology, but connected with the business side of that.
Interesting. Okay.
Oh,
Benny, you have a
sorry.
question?
Just very quick. Yeah, I don't know if it's a question, maybe just a comment, but within the context of like a professional podcast, what's the difference between like that and a webinar? Just out of curiosity, like, is it almost seen as like a more constant webinar of sorts when you have kind of business podcast, or yeah, I don't know. It's kind of an idea that came to mind.
Yeah, that's definitely a very good question. The contrast between a podcast, a business podcast, a brand podcast, company podcast, and a webinar. Yeah, first of all, well, in the podcast, most of the podcasts are just audio. Our podcast is only audio, actually. That is one difference. So we don't have any video. But in terms of, they say the long-term impact for the company who is hosting that, the good thing of podcast is that it's continuous. You are doing this either once a week, every 2 weeks, or the frequency you want. So through the time, you build an audience. So it's much easier to build an audience because you have one episode, we have another, a few months later another. So people who have heard about you once, heard about you sometime later because a close person just was interviewed and she shared, oh, these guys are again. So it's good for this brand awareness. And by following, in the case of podcasts, you can follow in the app, for instance, in Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or many other apps, you can follow, subscribe, so you will get a notification. So that's also a big advantage. In contrast, webinars it's one-time event. We want attention to in this time for this topic, and we want to capitalize in that way. So I think for me, those are the main differences. There can be others, of course.
That makes sense. I honestly didn't even think about that, but yeah, no, especially the idea of just having a service specifically for podcasts that you could subscribe to it and be notified. Yeah, that's a huge advantage without a doubt. And then obviously other little nuances as well. But yeah, just a random question that came to mind. Thank you.
I might take a crack at answering, adding to that.
Yeah, for sure.
Webinars, you kind of have to be sitting in front of your computer and watching, and there's always kind of a sales pitch, right? You're seeing them talking about their products. But I like what Oscar's doing in the sense that he's not overtly selling the product. They're talking about the technology, and people can listen to it in the car, in the gym, while taking a walk.
True.
And, you know, people build relationships with podcasters. Like, there are people who reach out to me who talk like they know me. I've never met them, but because of that, they're hearing me, they're hearing us in their head, they're hearing Oscar in their head. They kind of develop that relationship, and you become more trustworthy for them because, well, depends on how you act on the podcast. If you're acting sleazy, you will become less trustworthy and they stop listening to you. But yeah, I like that. Things I might want to implement in my own at my own company. Thanks, Oscar. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So, all right. So you have 2 podcasts and you've written 2 books. What made you write books? Writing books, I heard, is not easy, and I heard by trying. So, yeah. What made you write a book, and how did you actually finish the book?
Yeah, you're right. It's not that easy, definitely. You need to like writing for sure. So at least I like writing when I started. I had this, some interest in writing. And of course, I had to brush up the skills a lot on the way. Yeah, so I started writing the first book. That's called Create and Deliver a Killer Product Demo. I started around 2016. Yeah, at that time I was also, not long ago, I had started a podcast, so I was interested in switching somehow, because my previous job had been more technical, more into IT, technical support, or product development, product management, product development, in that direction. But I felt that part of myself was more into sales, into marketing, sales, in that direction. So so one day I got an idea that just looking for interesting videos, things, articles, okay, in many of the talks, presentations, famous presentations by successful people, many of those have a product demo, like Steve Jobs doing the product demo of the MacBook Air, of the iPhone, etc. And of course, there are many more recent. And okay, many of these great presentations have a demo, even a short demo. So I started making some analysis, and I wrote a first article about just best practices about pro demos. And actually that became the index from my book. So I had to, of course, make much more research about each of these topics, but that became the index. And yeah, one day I was like that, like today, being interviewed, and I say, yeah, I'm going to write a book. I say that publicly. So you have to finish what you offer. Yeah. So first of all, I did a self-published book in 2017. I started 16 and I delivered on 17. But then I was lucky that a publisher called A Press, they fund me. They fund my pitch, my Indiegogo campaign video, and they like it. They saw, of course, the book as well, and say, okay, can we release a new version under our brand? And that's what we did. I created a second version, a published version of that one, which is actually here, if you can see. This is
Okay.
So this is create and deliver a clear program of an A Press. And then, well, definitely they were happy with the final product. So they told me what you would like to write next. And last year, 2019, I had the idea of talking about public speaking being much more wider. And my idea was public speaking for the technology industry. That was still my main focus. And my idea was let's go up around 10 secrets or 10 tactics, 10 tools that the best speakers in technology are using from the past and from the present. And I found these 10 tools, 10 secrets, and that's the base of this new book, Rock the Tech Stage, which took me from end of 2019 until around August this 2020, and now it's published in December.
Okay.
Very cool. Oh, just maybe a quick question about the book. Thank you, I appreciate it. Quick question about the book writing process, if that's all right. So with respect to that first book, did you know it was going to be a book right from the get-go, or did you first write out did you write out the index, and then as you were looking at that, kind of what you need to do to present a good demo, realize that, oh man, there's so much more into this, I'm going to expand this out more and more and more, then all of a sudden you have a book on your hands?
Yeah, absolutely, it's true. I have it, as I say, I wrote a first article which had good reception by people who read it, and soon I believed that, okay, this can be the skeleton of a book, and it was true. But there were some aspects that I completely didn't know at the beginning, and I found them, and I needed to address them, do more research, interview people, etc. And one of those was actually product demos for sales engineer, for pre-sales, for enterprise software, etc. Because the first demos I saw were these public demos, product launches or pitches. Yeah. So I had to do more research about that, talk with some people who are doing that. And yeah, so I also definitely learned a lot about that. So at the time I was sales engineer, I was I was more ready for doing those type of demos.
So what was the hardest part about writing a book?
I think the hardest part, at least for me, is to do it constantly, relatively constantly, because of course you have other things to do. Rarely one writer has 90% time to do the book. It's always doing something else. So I was, of course, doing other things at the same time. And sometimes you write, and the next week you are completely busy with something else. And the next week again, and after 4 months, 4 weeks, let's say, you don't know where you where you left. So these periods of disconnection definitely hard on writing. So the best if you do it at least something for every week. You should do at least something, so it's easier. It's a matter, of course, time management. Yeah, that's something also I learned, that I have to force myself to do some progress every week. Because there will be times where I will have more free time, or I will have the pressure to complete things. But even in the beginning, when feels there's no pressure, it's good to force yourself to ship something every week.
Okay. So you had a full-time job. I don't know if you're married or anything. Like, are you married? Do you have kids?
Yes.
So okay, you're married with children. I love
Well,
that.
without
too.
that.
Without children, you're married. Still, you have to spend time with your significant other, and then
Yes.
you have a podcast, which you're doing it weekly.
I start doing weekly, but I after 2 years I'll start doing every 2 weeks only. 2 days every 2 weeks.
Okay, and you've written 2 books over. You could do better. I don't know. All right, so speaking of public speaking, and specifically for SEs, do you see that SEs are lacking in some areas, and what would those be?
Yes. So I start meeting SEs also because of my job. I have some colleagues, and also because in Finland, the person who introduced Janne Korhonen, he was already a few years ago, he organized the sales engineering meetups. So I start meeting sales engineers also in these meetups. And well, I can say that the sales engineers are clearly more eloquent than an average engineer. I think that's clear. They are more structured, more sales oriented, more eloquent, more used to talk with customers, etc. But of course, not everybody is so good at speaking in front of 50 person or even more. No, definitely not. So I would say there's one ladder higher than the others, but of course, everybody can improve. So you would like to know what how can they improve, or why they should do public speaking, or which what you would.
Yeah, like, well, we kind of do public speaking maybe on the smaller stage, not like but is there something you see that they're something common that you see that they're horribly bad at?
What would I say? Not horribly, but of course, one of the most common mistakes for anybody in technology is to speak in very abstract terms, make it too complicated, use buzzwords, too many acronyms, too many buzzwords, speaking in abstract terms. That's very common. It's just the language you use which make it difficult for anybody who is not directly used to talk with you in your same domain. You can be also engineer, you can be sales engineer, but in a different domain, this other person will not understand you because they are not used to this same jargon.
Yep.
So that's one thing that applies, I would say, for any person who speaks about technical topics. That's one. Personally, I completely avoid using acronyms, for instance, as much as possible. Well, there are some that you have to use, like API. Okay, it will be too long if you try to say the complete name, but there are too many. So I completely avoid saying acronyms as much as I can. And use for the abstract thing, it's important to go to the concrete side. When you want to explain something, use stories or concrete examples, completely concrete examples, use cases. Those are the ways you steer clear of the abstract thing. That's one of the abstract that would be. Another thing that many people, including of course engineers, do, that they need to do a presentation. They start, especially a new presentation, they start with a blank PowerPoint, and start trying to start writing, building, copy and paste some image, etc. But the best one is that you start completely from scratch, pen and paper, trying to think what is the main idea, behind this, and try to build a main idea, main point, main message, basic structure. And only when you have some clarity in your structure, your points, your examples that you're going to present, then you go to the tool, to PowerPoint, and that will help you a lot. The difference is going to be huge if you do in that way. So that's a common mistake, to start with a blank PowerPoint.
Fair. That one comment you mentioned about the whole, stay away from abstract terms, I suppose, and kind of get more specific to the specific scenario, really resonates strongly. So I just recently started a newish job. I guess it's been just under 4 months, give or take. And I find that when I'm going into a demo, or I guess when I'm trying to present something that I'm not as familiar with, where I have a general sense of how things work, but not really at the same time, then I'll go in and just start explaining things in a very like abstract, like general way, like, oh yeah, like this kind of works in a general scenario, but nothing specific to yours, because I don't really understand it, or it doesn't really isn't something I could articulate very well. And as that's always taking place, I'm always very cognizant of the fact that, oh man, like I wish I knew what I was saying right now, so that way I could actually articulate it with value. Because in other situations, once they actually learn something and you're able to present it in ways that they could actually, in whatever way they're able to understand it, as opposed to whatever generalist, hodgepodge way that I just kind of make up on the spot, it always resonates better when it's specific. So yeah, actually understanding things and not speaking too generally or too abstractly is definitely important.
So I think that comes from the technical knowledge that you have. The
100%.
more technical you are, and the more you know the product and what it solves, the better you can speak about it, which is why sales engineers have the term engineers at the end. Right? So I like that. And speaking about building a PowerPoint, have you read the book by Dale Carnegie, Stand and Deliver?
I read one public speaking. There are several versions of the Dale Carnegie books. So I definitely read one book of him, not that one, but yes.
Yeah, oh, he has a lot. So I read that book, and kind of the point he said, he kind of agreed with you in terms of how to like build. They didn't have PowerPoints at the time, but if you want to like write a what's an essay or public speaking, if you want to prepare for that, the best way to start is basically having a piece of paper, taking 10 minutes and asking all the questions you can think of about the topic that you're about to talk about, and then knowing the answers to those, and based on that you can actually build the presentation. If you don't know what questions you're answering,
yes,
because you're in the end you're trying to take someone from point A to point B, you're trying to have a shift in view, or a shift in you're trying to sell something. In the end you want them to move to where you want them to move, so you're basically answering questions, and that's what a speech is.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And that comes to the one important thing in communication, is that to know your audience. So in the case of sales engineering, you have to anticipate the question of the audience connected to what you say. It's super important. So in this structure, in these main points, you have to address these anticipated questions.
Yeah, I saw, like, I'm stalking you on LinkedIn right now, and I saw like you are in Toastmasters. You've been in Toastmasters for a long time. How has that helped your public speaking?
Yes, that definitely helped me. First of all, when I started in Toastmasters, was here in Finland already, and I wanted to find ways to practice more public speaking in English, but because not native and non-native English. So I found them, and that was very, very useful, and I kept learning gradually. It's peer learning. You learn gradually things, and the good thing is that I was consistent, so I never really stopped since I started. I've been in some moments much more active, or sometimes less active, but I was always. And that allows me also to build this interest in public speaking. So I start learning, reading more books, watching videos, analyzing, and that led to the podcast, to the books, etc. And today, in which I definitely have a better level than when I started, it also helps me to keep practicing, because as a sales engineer, we are not doing talks every week. No? We are doing demos or sales presentations. but you want to try new material, something different, that's an excellent place. So you can keep practicing. I would say you can experiment new things in Toastmaster meetings. That's very useful.
I've never done Toastmasters.
Mm-hmm.
My wife did for a while. Just to comment about like doing something different, they give you kind of random assignments about random topics that you have to create speeches about, right? Is that accurate?
Yeah, the thing is that the meetings, first of all, in most of clubs is let's say 2 hours every 2 weeks. That's more or less. It's regularly. So, and in every meeting, the members who are normally, let's say 20% in average, they assign the roles. So one day you are doing one role, one day you are the speaker, one day you are the MC, the Toastmaster of the day. We are running the meeting. One day you are evaluator of one of the speakers. Different roles. So when you speak, there's a educational program. So every time you speak, you have a specific goal to meet. You have to focus, let's say in body language, you have to focus on structuring your speech. You have to focus on getting to the point. And different persuasion can be sales, completely different goals. And then around that goal, you can choose anything you want. You can choose any topic you want. Can be something very professional, can be something your hobby, etc. So that's how it is. You choose the topic, but based on some specific goals that keep some evaluation guidelines for that specific
Okay.
topic.
And how has that helped you as an SE? Because we're focused on sales engineers on this podcast. How has that helped you?
Directly as a SE, that's a good question. One of the part of this educational program, there was five projects called technical presentations, in which I had to do, for instance, there was one about a demonstration, actually, demonstrate something. There was another about speak technical topics to a general audience. The other was, for instance, I think simplify. So there are specific goals that are useful. Those definitely helped me, because when I did that projects of technical presentation, I found it very difficult because I had to choose technical topics. I could not talk about my hobbies or something politics. No, I had to talk about technical topics, focus on these goals of communication, and that definitely helped me a lot. And definitely I can feel that has contributed for me to be speak in a more simple way when I speak about technical topics.
Maybe this will, or maybe you just answered it just now, but earlier on the show, we were talking about, running a podcast and also, doing one for your business as well as having your own as well. And we talked about kind of maybe the differences between podcasts and webinars, but on some of these webinars I've been on and been to, we are sometimes talking about some technical topics to audiences that might be not necessarily, I guess, the main, or rather audiences that might not be as technical, I suppose. So
Yes.
what might be some of the tips that you've picked up in time to present very technical topics to non-technical people?
I think the probably the best one is telling stories. You find some story. There are different type of stories. Personal story. If you find a personal story to illustrate one point, that's the best. If not, the second is, to me, is the customer story, or the real user story, customer story, happy customer story. This you can, if you have a story like that, you can share. Is going to help you a lot in illustrate this new topic. Can be something difficult. Also focus on the problem. Try to explain in a more vivid way, more concrete way, what is the problem and what could be the benefit in concrete. This is explain this scenario, but very concrete, and explain the future scenario. Those are things that, for the most difficult topics and for more, let's say, the more general audiences will definitely help. And the beginning is the key. You have to start very, very simple, very concrete, very simple. Sometimes very energetic is what you have to do. Other things that can help you is using metaphors, for instance. Those are more difficult to find good metaphors. Sometimes there are good metaphors for something you already want to explain. Sometimes you have to make your own metaphors, but those are metaphors. Stories, I think, are the top. But the beginning of the whatever is webinar, pitch, talk, the very beginning is essential.
Very cool. Very cool. That's helpful. Thank you. Very quickly about the whole metaphor piece. Do you have an example of a quick metaphor that you found to be useful in a certain situation?
Oh yeah, metaphors are always tricky to find your own metaphor for. Let me see. One that I have used lately. No, it's a bit difficult to find exact metaphors for what you want. Okay, one that comes to my mind and I somehow borrowed from another company is building airplanes in the sky. I don't know if you heard that one, building airplanes in the sky. That I found it in a video from maybe in the 90s, late 90s. It's still in YouTube, you can find it. That a consulting company that later became HP Enterprise. And there is a video of a plane, which is on the skies, is full of passengers. But you can also see that outside the plane, there are guys building the plane. So building the place in the skies. And that means that the metaphor there is that when you are, as a consulting company, you are giving a software, big software to customers. They should be, you should be doing modification of the software at the same time that the system is running without interrupting that. So, and that can apply. I use that metaphor when I share one article of one of my colleagues that talk about migration, for instance, migration of customers in big environments, in enterprise environments. You have to do migration of customers from one system to another. Again, you have to do it like building airplanes in the sky. You have to, the customers should never notice that. It's a big operation, but for them, they should be completely invisible, no interruptions.
That's a great one. I've heard that one quite a bit. I love that one quite a bit as well. It's a nice visual.
Well, I guess that's a good way to actually move on to the not so fire round. These are the same 4 questions we ask almost every guest. I don't know if you've heard them before, but if you haven't, well, this is going to be fun. So question number 1, usually Benny leads us off.
Yeah. So, you've had quite an illustrious past or maybe history so far, and just, things that you've done, whether it be as an author or a podcast host or as an SE and others as well. But maybe just specifically focusing, well, you could choose maybe, but mostly we ask around SEs, what do you love about being a sales engineer? But if you also want to expand it out and say, what do you love about being an author or a podcast host, by all means.
Or a side hustler.
Or side hustler.
Yeah, I can focus on sales engineer. Actually, my role is a combination of, as you say, real sales engineer job, like doing, joining the sales presentation, doing demos, proof of concept, this kind of stuff. I also do the podcast for the company. So that's, and we also do training. Actually, I lead the training program at the company. So we do from at least every 2 months, we do some training. So I like the combination of all these different activities that I do, but sales engineer is a role that I like a lot because it's this combination of the technical. You need to be technical, learn new things, to put get the hands dirty. But at the same time, you're selling, using your persuasion, creativity skills. That for me is a magnificent combination. Quite fun.
I'd like to answer the question. I've never actually answered this question, but based on you, basically, just what you've done, I think one thing that's great about sales engineering is that you're able to make of the role whatever it is that you want. You have so much exposure, and you can, if you have a side hustle, that can affect your career positively. Like, because you had a podcast, they're allowing you to make more podcasts for the company, which brings more visibility. I think that's not available in any other career, personally. Excuse me. All right, question number 2. What would you change about being a sales engineer?
That's a good question. Oh. But it's yeah, it all depends. Everybody has a different combination of roles. Yeah, that's a difficult question to say.
Basically nothing. Sales engineering is perfect. You wouldn't change a single thing.
Oh, they have to certainly. I need to learn a bit more about public speaking if I can say something.
There you go.
Because it's part of what we need. Yeah, I myself have to learn more every day. Yes, that's what it is.
Nice.
Well, I guess there's always ways, though, to get better. And obviously, books like yours and your podcast are great ways. And we'll have those linked in the show notes after, I guess, when the show actually goes up. But in the meantime, what are some other good books or tools or resources? And my apologies for the noise behind me, but what were some good books, tools, or resources that you'd also recommend to help people improve their public speaking skills or otherwise just become better SEs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for this, particularly for SEs, one book that was somehow has similar style in focus on speakers in technology is by Carmine Gallo, The Presentation Secrets of Steve Jobs. Even though this book is older, it's maybe 9 years old already, but focus about this, of course, exceptional presenter in technology, in the technology arena. The things he did, how he used different elements of public speaking and effective communication to sell technology in a exceptional way as he did. So The Presentation Secrets of Steve Jobs by Carmine Gallo, I think that would be probably my best recommendation of another book.
Awesome.
Nice. Nice. All right, last question of the not so fire round. What separates great sales engineers from the okay or not so great?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely a good question. You have to keep learning also in the technical side, because sales engineer can, depending, of course, the complexity of the software or the product you sell, it might be enough if you know the product until one level and stop there, and then you are more like sales oriented. You do your job well, but you could learn much more on that and be much more be able to do more complex things, keep better advice to the customers, etc. So I think that's something very important. Get your hands dirty, keep learning the difficult things, because that will help you to be really a rock star in this type of role.
All right. Well, last question of the day, Oscar. How can our audience help you? And also, where can they reach out if they want to?
Yeah, thanks a lot. For asking this. Well, at this time, as the book just launched, the best way to help you would be to, of course, buy it if it's for you, if it's something that will help you, and also help me to spread the word about that. The website of the book is rockthetechstage.com. The book is also available in Amazon, Barnes Nobles, and most of the ebook stores that they're available. So yeah, please. So if you are still an engineer, you definitely need this book. If you're not, but you know people who are into the tech arena, I'm sure this will help them. So please help me to spread the word. And
I think this would be great for product managers, my personal view, because they do a lot of more webinars and presentations versus conversations. So
yes.
And also the idea of, having to sell very technical topics to non-technical people. I feel like that's perfect for a product manager.
All right, Oscar, thanks a lot for your time. If you think of anything else that we can help with, please let us know. All the links will be in the show notes. And this is show 141. At least it's show 141 for now. We will see you next time. Thanks, Oscar.
Thank you, Ramsey. Thank you, Bina. It was a pleasure.
Okay.
And that brings us to the end of the show. As you noticed, Benny was on the show. He's not on the intro and outro because it is a last minute thing, I remembered that I have to record these intros and outros. I hope you guys enjoyed the show with Oscar. I personally feel, in addition to everything we talked about today, we talked about sales engineering, we talked about the things that he's doing for his personal, like podcast on a personal level and podcast for work. But beyond that, I feel sales engineers or anybody should really have a side hustle. We should not be dependent on one income stream. And not that I have multiple income streams, like we can talk about investments later if that's the topic you guys want to talk about. But having the podcast for me, in addition to making me better at my job, has given me connections. So I feel everybody should have a side gig, whether it's to make them money or to open up their network to other people who they would never have access to, which is what this podcast has done for me. And it's done, like, other people have not done podcasts, but they've done other things. Sales engineers have done other things to get connected. So we should be doing that. We should be finding ways to network so that if anything happened with our role, we can actually find a job quicker. Also, and I think that this is more important, we are in a position to help others, which is what we do as sales engineers, which is what I was talking about early on in the intro. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I hope you took. I'm working on some stuff for my company, not for We the SEs, for the company I work for, mainly because of the things I talked to Oscar about. So I hope you took something out of this, and you can implement one thing into your job to make your job easier. Because if you can, build trust with customers through a podcast or through a YouTube channel or whatever it is, it makes it easier for you to actually help them. Makes it easier for them to open up to you. So that's my final thought. If you did like the show, leave a rating, review wherever you listen to it. And I am proud of the SE community. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for 2 years, almost 3 years of listening. And I will see you guys next time. With that, this is Ramsey signing off.